Thank you, guys. My name is Osama Kamal. I just do SOC consulting for the past 4 to 5 years, going around the region. So I'm interacting with lots of organizations. And today I'm just going to share with you some of the experience and how we think that things should be done to build detection capability. For us, the SOC is meant for detection and response. So they were going to focus on building detection capabilities. So from the SOC perspective, so these are the key elements that we should focus on. And I will go through some of them during this presentation. The first thing, we need to have like a strategy and roadmap. And I've seen lots of organizations, they just delegate their responsibility of their security operation to managed service provider without understanding what are the implications, how things will be running. They let the managed service provider drive their operation, which is usually not a good thing to do. So you need some kind of strategy and roadmap. How are you going to manage your security operations center? Definitely you need some skilled resources. Even if you are delegating your security operation or getting a managed service provider, you need to have some resources in the organization that understand what's happening there. Your managed service provider will not understand exactly how things are going on your network. So you need someone on the ground who understand the network. We have the good skills to run the operation or drive the operation. I cannot imagine a SOC running these days without automation orchestration. That saves lots of time, and we'll go through some of the examples there. Detection framework, we'll go through it, metrics and visibility. So I've seen also lots of SOC operations, they don't have visibility into what's going on. They have some nice reports and dashboards on a video wall, but doesn't mean anything, just for showing off for the management or something like that. You need to build a good architecture and to not just collect logs, but just to collect the right amount of logs and the right depth of logs. So let's go through some of them very quickly. We don't have much time. So for the architecture, people tend to mix between coverage and visibility. So for coverage, if you go to any organization, they will tell you, yes, I'm sending like 80% of my systems, I'm collecting logs out of them. That's easy. What's usually ignored is the visibility, the depth of logging that you are collecting. So let's say you're collecting logs from Windows Server. What kind of audit policy are there? So we can give you lots of examples for that, but usually people tend to ignore the depth of logging that you are collecting from your network. So this is very important to notice. Okay? In terms of use case framework, let's say you are building a SOC, you need to enhance your detection capability. So enhancing your detection capability, it's not just a technical thing, it's a process. So you need to plan for it, build your use cases or rules, run it, fine-tune it, enhance it, update, and it's a full cycle. This full cycle, there are some inputs to it. And these inputs will cover the gaps that you usually have on your operation. And no matter, it doesn't matter how many use cases or rules or how many vendors you are getting into your operation, you will still have some gaps in your network, in your detection capability. So that's why we need some inputs. From time to time, you need to have some red teaming exercise, adversary simulation exercise, historical incidents. All of these inputs are very essential. I mean, they are really essential in building your detection capability. The outcome of these reports will be an input to the SOC to build rules to close the gaps that's found on these capabilities. And because of the attackers are changing their tactics and techniques all the time, you will have to have these gap exercise, I mean the gap assessment exercise from a technical point of view to feed up into your SOC detection process. Threat hunting is very important. You build your hypothesis and start doing threat hunting. The gaps, again, it's feed into the detection capabilities. There are some business requirements, some compliance requirements, your internal policies, you need to take it into consideration. If you go to the managed security service provider or a vendor, they don't know these things. I mean, it has to come from internal. You need to understand what are the requirements inside the organization. Usually people, I mean, what people are doing, they start with the threats. start from the technical part. There are some tactics and techniques. You try to utilize MITRE attack framework and discovering the threats. But there are other elements you need to consider to build your threat detection capability. So what we are saying that you need to have a framework. And the framework is meant to organize the whole process and document what are you implementing for your detection capability. So the framework should be generic, should be simple, human readable format that you can do some researches on it, some reporting. It should be very simple for everyone to understand how are you building your detection inside the SOC. It's the kind of documentation. And I've seen lots of people, lots of SOC operation, they don't exactly know what kind of detection rules they have. The list keeps growing by time, and they don't know exactly what are detecting, what are they looking at. So that's important to have like a kind of documentation part. And we'll talk about the use case framework structure right now. MITRE attack mapping is, now everyone likes MITRE attack, it's good point, and you have to map your detection capability to MITRE attack when possible. Some of the MITRE attacks are very generic, you cannot map it, but it's a good thing to understand what are you detecting based on MITRE attack, and it keeps the ongoing enhancement as part of the process. And of course, we need to have a unit test for most of the rules. And I've seen lots of, again, organizations, they have lots of rules, but many of these rules are not firing, either because they are having wrong fields, they are getting wrong log sources. It will never fire. They just have the rules, but it's useless. Okay? So using MITRE attack, since everyone likes MITRE attack, it's comprehensive knowledge of adversary tactics and techniques. It's real world and keep growing, and it's always updated. So it's nice to have it mapped to your detection rule. So this is what we usually have for the framework structure. So we have, on the left side, we have the use cases types. So you can have like the attack, which is the post-exploitation rules. And we have the pre-exploitation rules, like pre-attack. They have some rules for health check if your log source is not sending. One of the like critical log sources are not sending logs, we need to be alerted. Some policy violation based on the organization security policy. We need to have rules to cover some of these policies. OT, if you are running OT part, and others. The others are the use case types that you cannot map it to any of these things. Like, I'll give you an example, like malware infection. You cannot map it to which MITRE attack phases that. You cannot map this. So let's put it on the others use case types. And then this part of this use case type, under this use case type, we have use cases. So let's talk about attack. One example is like data exfiltration. So the use case would be data exfiltration. There is one-to-N relationship between this. Under the data exfiltration, we have set of rules. So you can do data exfiltration using DNS. You can do data exfiltration using ICMP. You can do it using HTTPS. You need to have several rules under these use cases. And for each and every rule, we need to set up the action. So when you have an alert for data exfiltration, what kind of action will be done? Either sending an email or alert or report or add to another reference set that can be used in a different rule. Again, we need to map the rule to a response procedure. I don't want my analysts to just reinvent the wheel and when they get an alert, they try to rethink what I'm going to do. So this mapping should be ideally one-to-one. For each and every rule, we need to have a playbook. How are we going to handle this playbook? And this is very effective if you are running a large operation. Again, for the unit tests, this is again important. We have to, for each and every rule, when applicable, we need to have unit test. Understand some of the rules cannot be tested in real life because you need to install some attacking tools or to do some actions that not usually possible on operational network, but this is very important to have unit tests to understand if the rules are working effectively or not. So this is one example of the, I'll take one of the techniques that's in MITRE, which is attack T1076, which is RDP. So starting with RDP, remote desktop protocol, there are many event IDs in different systems. So it's not just when you start an RDP session from your source to a destination, The event IDs from Windows platform exist in the destination and on the Active Directory. On the Active Directory domain controllers, you have the authentication levels, or authentication events, but also on the destination, you have different event IDs. And you need to understand this before. Let's start with the RDP. We need to understand how the protocol is working, how the different fields are available in each and every system of that. So let's focus on the events on the domain controllers. I'm not sure if this is clear or not, but so we have two event IDs for 4624 and 4625. We need to understand each and every field of these things. So these are general authentication event IDs, and to understand if it's RDP or not, you look at the login type. So login type could be like 10 or maybe 7 if you are reconnecting. And there are some useful information that you can build your rules based on this information. And most of the vendors or SIM vendors, they do parsing for these events, but not all of them. So you need to do parsing manually or to add these fields to your understanding of the SIM. So for one example, the event ID, the field authentication, when you have the workstation name, you have the source IP, you have the status code, why this login failed. And these status codes are very important to understand. So from an analyst perspective, I need to know why this authentication failed. So either it's the username is wrong, or the password is wrong, or it's a disabled account, or it's password expired. This kind of status code, understanding them and adding them to your rules will help you in detecting what's going on. Okay? So for example, we're talking just on RDP. This is one element, one technique in the MITRE attack, and we can build like 12 rules and more than that. Just by understanding the fields, how this event are working, what are the messages we are receiving. So you can detect password spraying attacks, lots of other things that can help you for detection. The problem is here, even if you have these kind of rules, you need to map this to your environment. And most of the people, they don't really understand what's happening on the environment. So this rule may be applicable to one organization, and for other organization, it's not applicable. They have PAM, they have jump servers, they have other components that you need to take into consideration when you are building your rules here. So not just taking what the vendor is giving you, you need to understand how the environment is working. And in many cases, the SOC team, they don't really know exactly how the network is set up. And in some cases, they are isolated from the systems teams on the network team. They're not sharing information. But these are the challenges that you need to overcome to build like a good detection capability. The next part is reporting. And this is what I'm sharing with you, is you need to have fully automated pipeline for reporting. And I've seen SOC analysts spending days, like at least 1 day a week, just to build reports. Having screenshots, manual reports, copy-paste into PowerPoint, and sending to the management for, it's a waste of time. So what we need to achieve here is to have a fully automated pipeline. And this is what we are doing, using an open source tool called Metabase. It's a BI tool, open source, very easy to set up. And we are collecting the whatever needed from our SIM, whether the SIM is, whatever the SIM vendor, they all have APIs. You can collect data out of it, like collect the alerts, collect the log sources, status, lots of things that you can collect from the SIM. And you also need to collect some data from the ticketing tool. The ticketing tool should be part of your SOC. Of course, everything running on the SOC should be in a ticket, either on orchestration platform or a ticketing tool. You need to collect this information regarding the incidents or the tickets inside the SOC. Once you collect the data, we're using Logstash. It's an open source tool. You collect the input and output. The input is calling the API of your tools, storing the data into MySQL database, and Metabase supports MySQL, supports lots of data stores, even SQLite. So once you have the data in your data store, you can visualize lots of things. So I'm just sharing some of the examples of the reports that you can do freely. It's not very complex, like top 10 alerts, top 10 log sources contributing to alerts. The purpose of reporting is not just to show the management. It's to help you to make decisions inside the SOC. So let's say we have lots of log sources contributing to alerts. So we need to understand why we have one log source having most of our alerts coming from this log source. I need to understand what's going on. Maybe there are some noise I need to fine tune, maybe I need to filter some of these log sources. So this is the purpose of it. One thing is the open alerts, the aging of the alerts. And I need to understand why I'm having alerts that's spanning over 3 weeks. Maybe some of these alerts are waiting for action from the IT, from the network team, from the systems teams. This is very important. I mean, I need to raise this. My internal team is not helping us to take actions on the security alerts. So this is the purpose of the reporting. Another example of the dashboards that you can build. Number of alerts created this week. You can have it drawing in a map. Log source coverage. It's important. Dashboard. What kind of log sources are not sending logs? I need to take care of these things. And this is, if you build a fully automated pipeline for the reporting, you are saving lots of time to generate reports here. And this is the purpose of it. This is another sample dashboard. Is the coverage of techniques for your rules. I mean, my rules, let's say, I mean, if you look at these techniques covered by rules, I can see like some of these techniques I'm having like 20 rules covering one technique. And some techniques I'm having just one rule or 2 rules. So will help you for deciding where I should put some effort in my detection capability to enhance it here. And again, this can be happen only, it's fully automated. You don't have to spend time on it. And it's almost in real time. The next element we need to focus on is orchestration. And orchestration, automation, we need to understand why it's important. So the key element here, if you know what you are detecting and you know how to respond to it, you need to automate it. That's very clear. There's no need to spend time and doing the redoing everything every time you're getting a detection and a response. You spend lots of time in having this cycle again. The data science is just exploring. I'm not sure what I'm detecting. I'm not sure how I'm responding to it. The SOC analyst mindset is just focusing on responding to incidents. Okay. For the threat hunter, he's focusing on detection. And that's why in the SOC organization, we tend to advise people just have these rules separate. So detection, that's hunting. Responding, that's SOC analyst. Different mindsets. They have different goals. So if you can't, that's our advice to many people, just spread these rules together. See, the threat hunting is one element, one function, the SOC, and the SOC analyst is another function. The SOC analyst wants to close tickets, while the threat hunter is trying to find a sign of exploitation inside the network. So let's start with like a simple use case for the automation. What can you do? So let's say you have a SIM and you have a rule, and this rule fired. We have a virus detected, it's not cleaned, and it's an IT admin workstation. What can be done here? I can open ticket automatically to an automation orchestration platform, and then automatically collect some live forensics information from this machine, search the browsing history for this user for the past few hours, open a ticket to the help desk to rebuild the machine, reset the user password, send the user SMS to inform him, send the malware or the hash to your sandbox internally or externally, and then send the ticket to tier 2 analyst. For this process, there's no tier 1 here. So we are eliminating lots of time-consuming tasks for the tier 1. And I would say all of these things can be happen in a few minutes. Usually in normal scenarios, this might take a week. To happen. And then the process continue as like normal process. And this is another example of how you can use the automation orchestration platform. And this can be a commercial product. You can even use open source automation. I like Ansible, if you know Ansible. You can do some things of automation orchestration using open source tools as well. And these actions can be manually, semi-automated or automated. It depends on how are you going to collect or connect your orchestration platform to your internal network. So, for example, I mean, you have the inputs and escalation coming from your SIM, going to your orchestration and platform, opening tickets, and this, you can open ticket to, for example, like a ServiceNow or whatever, the ticketing tool or Jira or whatever, for the IT team to take action. You can also manually invoke some enrichments. I need to collect some information from my EDR tool. I need to collect some live forensics information. I need to isolate a machine. This can be done in few seconds, actually, not days. Some of the use cases here that very useful use cases, like phishing attack. If you receive a phishing alert or phishing advisory, let's say from MY or from QCert, you have intelligence advisory, including phishing. It goes to automatically into your SOAR platform. The SOAR platform automatically extract the IOCs, do some search on your curator to understand if you have any historical record of these IOCs, and again, talk to your SIEM to add these IOCs into reference set for future hits, and then open, if you find anything, you open a ticket to the ticketing, on the ticketing tool to the team to take care of it. So you can do lots of, I mean, you can imagine whatever scenario you have, there are lots of things can be done with automation. And as I said, I mean, I cannot imagine a SOC operation without automation these days. You can save lots of time. If you talk about, let's talk about vulnerability management. I've seen one of the cases, I mean, we built one of the cases when you get vulnerability reports from Qualys, for example, some of the internet exposed systems, and it goes to the SOAR platform, automatically open a ticket to the system owner, wait for confirmation from the system owner, initiate another scan, close the ticket automatically. So this can be done fully automated without involving human in this process. So these are sample of the use cases that you can work on if you're trying to build an automation orchestration platform. You have to start with the use cases. It's not about technology now. You need to understand what are the things that are taking most of my time as a SOC operation, and then tackle these problems, like intelligence reports and advisories, phishing alerts, vulnerability management, log sources errors, privilege account management, malware. These are very straightforward playbooks that you can automate and orchestrate in an easy way. Another part of your SOC operation, you should do some threat hunting. And threat hunting, this is the pyramid of pain. It's very famous. So we're talking about threat hunting is not about IOCs. It's not about IPs and domain names and network artifacts. It's hugely about the tactics and techniques. So as a threat hunter, I mean, if you have this threat hunting function inside the SOC, you should focus on the threats and the tactics and techniques the attacker are using based on the reports received, and start doing their investigation, build the hypothesis, and try to figure out if there is any exploitation sign inside the network. From the tools, the Japan CERT, they have nice report on the attackers' tools and how these tools will generate logs in terms of Windows event and Linux. So these are a good starting point to start the threat hunting. And you can do your threat hunting activities in a SIEM. Most people, they do hunting using EDR, but again, I mean, you have a SIEM, you have all the logs centralized. Why not starting the threat hunting on the SIEM? Okay. The last thing, because we don't have time now, we have to rush, it's you need to practice. And practicing, you need to, if a SOC analyst, you need to build your lab. You need to get your hands dirty. So this is my own lab. It's built in Intel NUC. I'm having like different, it's a very small device. You can build lots of VMs. You can access from everywhere using zero tier. It's an SDN, VPN. It's a nice tool to get access to your home without opening ports on the firewall or doing any netting or reverse netting. So this is nice to do. And this is where I started like 1 year back. And now I'm building another lab using open source tools. Now we have cloud. You can build your own lab on the cloud, very easy, using Terraform. Terraform is used to provision virtual machines on the cloud. And you can have Ansible to build your own tools and all whatever setup you need to build on these virtual machines. Terraform supports different cloud providers, and it's easy to set up. And this is just an example of what the kind of scripts. You can just define the virtual machine name, the location, which zone, the resource group, IPs, the disks, everything you can do it in a script. and just fire up the virtual machine. It's in a couple of minutes, you have your lab up and running. And then you build your tools using Ansible. And on the left side, I mean, this is the Elasticsearch, how to set up Elasticsearch using Ansible. It's very easy, straightforward, couple of minutes, you're done. And just a comparison how much you're going to pay. If you cannot afford $1,000 to build like a good lab in your home, you can just like for less than $5 a month, you can build a lab, you can provision it, you can tear it down in a few minutes. You don't need the lab to be open 24 hours a day. So this is just, I'm using DigitalOcean pricing just to give you an example of how much it will cost to do this. So that's it. Thank you. Any question? Yes.
Okay, how we can start to enhance the use cases, from where we can start in SOC team?
Well, that's like a high-level question, but there are lots of things. You need to first to understand your environment. Make sure that you're collecting the right log sources or like log and events, and then look at MITRE ATT&CK. And there are lots of good information out there. Pick one or two and then start working on how to detect these techniques or tactics and techniques. Like I said, I give an example of RDP. So start with something. I mean, you need to start. I mean, there are lots of tactics and techniques out there. Pick some techniques that you are familiar with, and then start building your rules based on these techniques. The information is available on MITRE ATT&CK website, and it gives you some advice and some even logic on how to build some detection on it. So that's, I mean, I would say start with MITRE ATT&CK. It's a good start to go.
Yep. So for the use cases in the SOC environment, first of all, it's very complex. You know, even in the presence of a framework like MITRE, it's not easy for a client to map it, you know, in their organization. It's very, very complex. How do you see the role of UEBA in the SOC environment? You know, so many use cases, and these use cases, you know, trigger, you know, an alert or not. We are always fighting for that. So don't you think in the next generation SOC, we will be, you know, UEBA will be playing a very important role in terms of machine learning and AI?
Yeah, UBA talked about user behavior analytics. Yeah, okay, and that's, of course, I mean, that's part of all the, if you're talking about the vendors, all of them, they have UBA there. So it's the UBA is, we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but this is just focusing on the user and user behavior analytics, okay? But there are other elements that are not covered by UBA. Let's talk about DNS logs. I mean, that's not there. It's not related, maybe. I'm not sure about that, but all the UBAs I'm seeing, that they're focusing on the user activity, the authentication, the logins, but not all the events that you can see on the network. But again, it's all of the vendors, they are providing the same functionality as part of their offering. So it's important, definitely. Done? Thank you.